Joining me today from the University Club on the Capital TV show, Ambassador J. Peter Pham. He's a distinguished fellow, Atlantic Council, and former U.S. Special Envoy for the Sahel and Great Lakes region. You are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Maria. Pleasure to be with you.
Ambassador, shortly after the 2016 election, you published a measured U.S. strategy for the new Africa, in which you argued that Africa's story is increasingly one of rising geopolitical importance and burgeoning economic dynamism. Do you still think that this is the case?
Thank you, Maria, for the question. Yes, there are some conflicts, there's some serious terrorism, as well as other geopolitical challenges we can talk about, but I very much believe that Africa is the future. Mm-hmm. By 2050, which is not that far away, 1 in 4 working age persons in our world will be an African. Just one country alone, the Democratic Republic of Congo, I would argue is to the 21st century what Saudi Arabia was to the 20th. Why do I say that? 70% of the world's cobalt production, which is absolutely critical for our batteries, electrification, everything from our smartphones to renewable energy, comes from the Congo. Mm-hmm. Just one country. So for all these reasons, for all Africa very much, I believe, is the future.
Let's go back in your career and see what was your mandate, where you were a special envoy to Sahel and the Great Lakes region. What difficulties did you have? What problems did you solve? Let us know about it.
Certainly. In the Great Lakes region, my challenge was to help assist in the first peaceful transition of power from one president to another in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That we achieved in 2019 with the inauguration of President Felix Tshisekedi. We achieved that, and we achieved a great deal in settling many of the disputes, although some things are flaring up now. It was to try to help the humanitarian situation and to create the conditions not just for peace, but also for development and harnessing the wonderful potential of renewable energy, hydro, solar, and the minerals of this region for their own development and certainly to power the economy of the 21st century for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Now you are the incumbent Vice President of the Association for the Study of the Middle East and Africa. How do you see the role of the Gulf states, especially UAE, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, in this region? How do you assess their role in humanitarian section, in security defense section?
Well, so I think as a lot of things have shifted and changed over the years. One of them, of course, is with several of the Arab countries, the Abraham Accords, and the launching of normal relations with Israel, which the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, to a limited extent Sudan, and others have participated in. Others is this increasing outreach to Africa, and one sees humanitarian assistance, but also economic investment in ports, in infrastructure, in air links. So as part of the diversification of their own economies, many Arab countries are seeing opportunities also in Africa, not only to invest in the growing economy of the 21st century, but to assure things like food security for their own needs as well.
My question is about the recent agreement or the investment of the United Arab Emirates in Somalia. There was a new president. There is some difficulties. It was a corrupted place before that. Do you have any view about how to make this country better, in a better place to invest?
Well, if you look at Somalia, I would say look north to Somaliland, where the United Arab Emirates has also invested in the port at Berbera, in the airport there, which has one of the longest landing strips in Africa. Somaliland, which was independent before Somalia was independent, and which after the Somali Civil War declared its own independence renewed, has achieved regular elections. It has achieved universal suffrage. It has had peace. It has kept terrorism at bay. The UAE and others are involved there. It goes to prove that things can be done. So you're absolutely right. It's the corruption in Mogadishu and Somalia that is the problem for them. But Somaliland in the north shows the way out of that.
Why there is an Israeli comeback into Africa, as you titled in one of your articles? Can you elaborate more?
The Israelis see the same thing that others see. There is enormous opportunity in Africa, both to help countries develop, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, room for everyone, but there's also great resources that Africa provides to the whole world. And so in their quest for recognition, security, they reach out, and many African countries face challenges that our Israeli friends are not unfamiliar with. How to cope with agriculture in a very dry area, how to use technology, how to fight against extremism and terrorism. So a lot of things that they're very good at and have developed skills at are needed, and Africa also provides them a few, which is why the African Union last year reinstated Israel as an observer state with status at the African Union headquarters.
You authored a book about India being a major player or nation involved increasingly in Africa. Can you tell us more about this Indian growing power in this area?
Certainly. India has been involved in Africa for even since colonial times. We ought to remember that Mahatma Gandhi began his political career of protest against colonial oppression in South Africa. So there's a long history. And India certainly was helpful to many newly independent African states at the beginning. For a while, India was turned inward. And it's only in recent decades that India has reached back out to Africa with serious investments, with political engagement. And it's another partner. And I think Africa needs as many partners as it can get, and these partners in turn have access to the great opportunities that Africa has. Well, there are still challenges and problems in Africa, whether it be of ongoing conflict, the use of children in those conflicts, but I look at the arc of my career. I now have to admit I'm middle-aged and beyond, and as I look back at my career, the trend, however, is in a positive direction. Sierra Leone, when I first worked in Sierra Leone, was a country torn by civil war. More than a third of its population was displaced. There was vicious rebellions. Child soldiers were common. Now we have a country at peace, strong economic growth. The capital, which was leveled when I was there, has been, early in my career, has been rebuilt. And so there's a great dynamism occurring there. And one sees that repeatedly across the continent. When I began my career, just to cite one little piece of data, there had been only one African president who had been voted out of office, and one other president, and this is 30 years after independence, who had retired at the end of his term. Today, democratic elections are the norm. Not everywhere, but certainly much more widely than when I began my career.
So do you have any concept to promulgate to pursue a successful U.S. foreign policy?
U.S. foreign policy to Africa requires several elements. First, engagement. We have to engage them. We have to meet them where they are. We have to, and that was my role as a special envoy, and that's the role our diplomats play when they're in place. And there are a number of vacancies that have to be filled. Secondly, we also have to recognize that Africa has a choice. We have to be there in order to compete. But, you know, there are American companies, whether it be in the mining sector, whether it be in telecommunications, whether it be other things, that are there and are competing, and they should have the full support of the U.S. government. Now, Congress has passed some laws giving the Development Finance Corporation and others authorities. Those should be used in the fullest, because this is where the competition of the 21st century is.
It seems that the U.S. administration right now have gaps everywhere. They have like withdrawing from Afghanistan. They don't have ambassador in some of the countries in the GCC, and in Africa there is some gaps. Do you think that Iran can fill this gap and have gained some influence in the Horn of Africa?
We certainly need to be aware that even if we are absent, others are not. And that's an important lesson to take away. You mentioned Iran. Certainly, it's, I think, no coincidence that the new head of the Quds force is himself a veteran of operations in Africa. And in smuggling weapons into West Africa, into trying to, and this is all well known. In fact, he was sanctioned long before he headed the Quds force for having this. Iran, but other actors, Russia getting involved in places like Central African Republic, Mali, Sudan, with the Wagner Group and other supposed private, in quotation, military
Ambassador Pham, there is some documents and involvement of Qatar also in helping chaos and supporting some terrorist group like Shabab Somal and others. Why Qatar is doing this bad influence in Africa?
Well, I would say with Qatar, it's the old adage, and you know it. A friend of my enemy is my enemy, but enemy of my enemy is my friend. And unfortunately, in recent years, we saw a bit of the Gulf rivalry play itself out in Africa. Fortunately, hopefully, this has been settled. I know, not perfectly, but settled, because this is not helpful. It's not helpful to the Arab states and their interests, and certainly not helpful for Africa to have these games going on. There's enough room, there's enough space for everyone.
Ambassador Pham, how do you see the problem can be fixed regarding the Ethiopian-Egyptian conflict about the dam, the Renaissance Dam?
The reality is the Renaissance Dam has been built. It's not going anywhere. The reality also is that if one looks at the amount of water that flows, this is a hydro dam, which means the water has to flow through it for it to have any use. So it's not a matter of keeping water from anyone. It's a matter of how the waters flow. And once it flows, the regulated flow, how it's used. The reality, and this is a very unpleasant reality, but the reality is that Egypt for many, many years has used more water than it is legally entitled to use. It's gotten used to using it. But now, with the regulated flow from the dam, what happens is that water is distributed over 12 months instead of coming one big flood and then dry for 8 months. That means Sudan, which also owns a portion of the water, is able to use it 12 months a year, as opposed to only 4 months a year. And this is where the conflict, we have to develop a way that everyone comes out ahead. Egypt has to learn to use less water and use what it has more efficiently. Yet Sudan is getting a windfall. And other Arab states, UAE, for example, investing now in agriculture, is investing precisely in this reality that one growing season has now become 2 or 3. And so it will contribute to the greater Arab world's food security. So
UAE is understanding the problem?
I think they're understanding I would say the environment, and that's why they're investing in Sudan. The investment makes great sense precisely because what the dam will actually mean for Sudanese agriculture, the increase in yields. And so what we're seeing is a situation where some people are going to have to adjust, some people are going to have a windfall, and other people are going to create energy. And how do we make this equitable for everyone? And that's the key for negotiation. And that's why I don't want to prejudge it. I think it's a mistake for outsiders to, but the people involved all the stakeholders need to discuss how we're going to make this workable as a transition. There's a transition that's going to happen. Whether it's shock therapy or it's more gradual is what needs to be solved.
Ambassador J. Peter Pham, thank you so much. You made me understand what's going on in Africa. I'm so glad to have you on my show. It's an interesting interview. Thank you again.
Thank you, Maria.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.